Mr. Fenter, you are a very well recognized African military researcher, and you are about to go back into action again, this time to RCA, República Centro-Africana. What you can tell us about it?
Well, it's a little bit like going back to old times, because I spent, in terms of time, probably a year in total in Mozambique, Angola, Portuguese Guinea in the old days. So I've been to the units now, the special units, the parachudistas, and also the commandos, and it's very similar in terms of talking to the people, and so it's going to be a rather unusual experience for me again after such a long time. The objective basically is to show what a small nation like you are doing, because in two African countries, in Mali against Al-Qaeda, which is a small force now, but it was bigger before, and now this special forces crowd in the Central African Republic. They are the only European NATO nation involved apart from France, but France is semi-independent. The Portuguese fall under the United Nations.
You are very clued up on what's happening not only in Mali, but other parts of Africa where the Portuguese are involved now. What can you tell us about it?
Well, there's no question that Al-Shabaab and Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, are moving some of their assets into Africa, because it's, in a sense, the Americans called it easy pickings. A lot of poor people, a lot of Islamic people, they have nothing else but their Allah, and they are enticed into this form of revolution, and it's big. If you take an example, what's happening in Mali now, it's the force there is called Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Akim, and it's vicious. People don't generally realize that the Royal Air Force have just sent 3 Chinook helicopters and also 60 British Special Forces, including SAS, to Mali. They're based in Gao, way in the north. You have other developments. Islamic State has claimed its first victories in the eastern Congo. People are not aware of that. Al-Shabaab, very effective in Somalia in certain areas, have opened a front in northern Mozambique. Well, this tells you something, that the escalation is slow, but it's gathering pace. And what is happening now in the Central African Republic is that with the arrival of the Portuguese, and this is the astonishing thing about it, because until they arrived 2 years ago, there was chaos. The United Nations wasn't holding the fort. They were, for reasons of their own, they couldn't. Portuguese moved in, rapid reaction force, outstandingly capable, fast, swift, and there's been a relative quietening down of the whole situation. There's no peace. 200 people cannot control an entire country.
That Portuguese military involvement is very well accepted on the ground. Why is that so?
Well, half the world doesn't know even that, to the extent of what they were involved. If you take Afghanistan, the British Chief of General Staff, Sir David Richards, he's now a Lord, raided the Portuguese unit around Kabul, which surrounded him, his reserve force, as his best troops. It's the same in what's going on now in the Central African Republic. The general that is in charge of the United Nations forces regards these Portuguese forces as so good that he has so often asked them to do jobs for which they're not suited. There's almost police jobs, and the Chief of Staff in Lisbon, the Admiral Ribeiro, has had to ask him, please, we are a reaction force. Please use us as a reaction force when the time, because when the emergency happens, you're going to need good people on the ground.
You mentioned that the Al-Shabaab is also spreading to other African parts like northern Mozambique. What is happening in the ground?
It's been very obscure for the simple reason that the media in Mozambique are not popular because of their own domestic problems. There's been all the corruption. So media are not allowed into the area. So it has been going on now for 2 years. Nobody knew who, why, what, excepting that there were a lot of people killed. Mainly black people. There have been very few white people killed. And it's been a very low-key, typical type of action that is launched by Islamic State or ISIS. Follows the same pattern. There is now definitely an identity given to this group because there have been some captured. Those people that are involved with the fighting sometimes don't speak the local languages, Makondi or whatever it is, or even Swahili, Kiswahili. And this brings me back to the Central African Republic. Many of the infiltration, people involved in this infiltration are coming in from Chad and also from Sudan. And although they are able to recruit local people who are Muslim, a lot of those involved speak only Arabic. So there's no question that there is an attempt to open a new frontier now. We don't know exactly what their objectives are, though. I suspect it would be the diamonds, and there would be other precious metals. But it is a way, it's the way they operate, the way they do in the Congo.
You are about to publish a new book in Portugal. What can you tell us about it?
Well, it's out next month. Actually, it'll be this month, September. It's on Angola. It was published, it's the liberation of Angola, published in Britain by Pen and Sword a year ago. And now the local people have taken it. It follows up my original book on the Portuguese Wars, the 3 Portuguese Wars. And there seems to be a lot of interest in, suddenly a lot of interest in what the Portuguese people did on the ground in the 3 colonial wars. Because we both know that it has been kept under wraps ever since 1974. And in the 80s and the 90s, people were afraid, I almost sense they were afraid to ask. But now, lately, suddenly there's been books appearing all over the place, and everything that I write on the subject, I'm very fortunate. I admire the Portuguese, and I'm not apologetic about that. And I state what they did, and it's basic. A small nation, 9 million in 1971, this war started, and the Portuguese forces stayed there. Goodness knows how they did it for 13 years, which is twice the time that the American army was officially in Vietnam. And they fought 3 major fronts, which were many thousands of kilometers from each other and from Portugal. And also, the most important thing of all is that whereas the American forces, for instance, could fly their troops by 707, Boeing 707 in those days, or everything in the colonial wars had to come in by sea. So a man that was dispatched to Santiulele or wherever it was would take 6 weeks to get there, because he would stop first in Bissau and then in Luanda, then Lorenzo Marques, and so on.